on material. So it's an instructive way to defend. You know, the white king's not as safe as it looks in that position once the queen's on f6, especially when the queen gets dragged over to h5. The back row, if the bishop wasn't here, it'd be a completely different story. But because if there's a bishop on d2, this would just be fine for white. But because the bishop's undeveloped, black's got resources to defend. Still, that was a forced draw. Solomon didn't go in for it, but f6 is a forced draw in that line. So in this particular variation, Solomon went for e5, and the engine doesn't like it. I still think it's a pretty good move, but it's less forcing than f6 because it gives black another defensive resource in g6. But the way Solomon conducted this attack was really impressive, actually, to be honest. Bishop takes e4 makes sense to me. I mean, there isn't a lot of other moves you can do. For example, the computer says if d takes e5, well, the knight h7 is already strong. We'll just make black accept the sacrifice, just to demonstrate how strong it is. Queen h5, and it's game over after f6. f6, you know, g6, you can just sacrifice, I presume. g6, bishop takes g6. I won't even analyse this. It's that good. Oh, right, I will. g6, bishop takes, not takes, but knight takes f6. I'll look at, because that looks a bit tricky at least. Yeah, sorry mate, rook takes f6, game over. Bishop f2, just run away with no check, don't take the bishop. Alright, so, and you're threatening mate on h7. So it's just too slow for black. So the move that Pengyu Chen played was the best. Bishop takes e5, and now white played knight takes h7. There was some talk that this was theory, and when I looked at this, I actually thought f6 was a stronger move, but the engine seems to like knight takes h7 more. I want to look at f6, but f6. See, I was this is poor by me. I was only looking at knight f6 again, but again I wasn't looking at the rook sack either, and I was looking at the similar line to before, where I was thinking knight h7. If knight takes h7, queen h5 was winning. But of course the problem is with the bishop on e5, that g6 is always going to work, whereas the bishop's not on e5, but g6 is just lost. Well, probably not even. It's not even lost then. So this idea that I'm thinking about is just bad. So this knight h7 idea of mine is weak. So f6 gets a draw, however, with the same idea as before, with rook takes f6. So it's a forced draw at least. But Solomon got better. He played knight h7, which the computer said was slightly better for black. That's a pretty gutsy move by Solomon. And let's see what Pengyu played against this. Computer says you should play rook e8 and not give up the exchange, and I think Sylvester Urban was kibitzing this idea of rook e8. Instead he played knight f6. This looked wrong, but as you can see from the engine, it's only equal. Very interesting position has arisen. It's funny that you can take the exchange 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5 and just be a cold change up, and then the computer still says it's only equal when you don't seem to be too bad. I suppose this bishop on e5 and these knight on f6 are pretty good pieces. Anyway, knight takes f8. By the way, let's just quickly look what would have happened if king h7 here. You always got to consider this. King takes h7 and queen h5 mates. So what's the difference in this line compared to others? The difference is that after f6, I haven't got time for knight f6 because rook f6 just wins the house straight away because you haven't got time to play both moves. If you tried g6 here, bishop g6, and then you'll take, yeah, this is just winning. For example, bishop g6. Let's try g6. So I'd be tempted to take with the rook there. Alright, queen takes g6. King h8. Queen h5. I suppose this is more forcing. King g8. Queen g5. That's nice. That's very nice actually. Just stabilizing the position with the queen, and then bringing it across the queen and rook mate. Very instructive. So the reason why it works is because the diagonal's too weak. The b1 from here, b1 to h7 diagonal is just too weak for black. Anyway, so let's look at the game. And here, knight f6 was played, and Solomon took the rook. And I thought he was just better now, but look, this Pengyu Chhen, he played a very good game, I think. I think he played a fantastic effort against Solomon, and he defended very, very doggedly. He went down in the end, but it certainly wasn't from a lack of fighting. And looking at the game, I'm sure we'll see that he had some chances. The game became incredibly sharp. So queen takes makes sense. Now Solomon's move, and he played rook a7, where it looks like the rook's pretty strong. Black's turn, bishop b7, which is the best move on the computer. And here Solomon played a very interesting move. He played g4. Now this was criticised by some as being a bit too slow, but I thought there was nothing really wrong with this. I thought it was alright. Pengyu took the pawn, and now g5 made this position really unclear. And we can see this is unclear because one, the bishop's on pre. This bishop's on pre to the queen. So black is forced to block the d file, or the d line as we say at MCC, when they move this, and they can do it because it's check. So in fact this is what happened in the game, so we'll have a look at it. So the bishop moves here, and now it's checked, and the king has to find a square, and the only safe square is h2. And now the knight jumped in, and it turns out that in this position I thought this was imbalanced, but I thought maybe white might have had a winning attack, but to me it looked pretty unbalanced.